All right, welcome into another episode of Story World. What's up, Alex?
What's up with you?
Man, we're talking about one of my favorite subjects ever tonight. Music,
Yes.
music,
Now,
music.
one of us is a talented, gifted, renowned musician,
Yes,
while the other is a fan. So, yeah,
yes.
in
Okay.
Steve's backstory, if anyone hasn't missed the episode, just I'm sure Steve will correct me if I have anything wrong. Basically, he was played with the Easter Brothers, essentially for quite a few years, right? At least a few years.
Yeah, nobody knows who they are, but yes,
Oh, I do.
um,
I do. I
you
do.
do. That's all
So
that
that's all that
matters.
matters. And everyone
Yeah,
that you've told.
bluegrass. If you're in the
So,
bluegrass gospel world, you know who they are. But otherwise,
so,
yeah. So yeah, it
so
was good.
but and I the same for millions of other people out there who have never learned how to play an instrument or know nothing about music. I think it's safe to say that pretty much all of us love music to some degree, and if you don't, then you must not be fully human, or something is wrong with you. Um,
Mm, this
that's
is
a
true.
that's a fact, not an opinion. So,
Objective fact.
but yeah, so yeah, this episode we're talking about music and storytelling.
Yeah.
So Steve, why don't you kick it off?
Sure, yeah. So just kind of some general thoughts that we can toss back and forth here is music is just it's just so powerful for helping you to transmit stories. It's like one of the things that I like to use music for is scripture memorization
Hmm.
actually. So it's hard for me. We've talked about this before. It's really hard for me to memorize scripture. But when you put it along to meter and sometimes rhyme, you can't always put it along to
Hmm.
rhyme, but when you put a meter to it and maybe even play a piano along with it or something like that, it's actually a lot easier to be able to memorize longer passages of scripture. So that's one really good example. But the general point there is that music helps you remember. Okay,
Hmm.
it really helps draw things to into your memory and makes you even be able to feel nostalgic about things. So, like in my life, I can think of events, right? So there are particular songs that I hear that bring me back um, to events that I've experienced, things in my life that either maybe were good or maybe were bad, or maybe even like totally times of my life in general that were good versus bad. Like when I think of Linkin Park's song
Hmm.
"Numb," I get
Hmm.
pulled back to like this whole phase of my childhood. Or to maybe for a little bit more lighthearted example, my kids are like super into Power Rangers right now. And when I hear the Power Rangers in Space or the Power Rangers Turbo theme song come on, it is on like Donkey Kong. I mean,
It is on.
forget the kids. I'm running through the house, feeling like I could take on hell with a water pistol. So it's
Yes.
really it's just really fascinating how music can do that to you. And well, I'll let you come in on there if you have any thoughts, so far on that.
No, I think one of my main points too is just the one reason why music is great specifically for storytelling or to remember a story or to help you remember even if it doesn't relate specifically to the song, help you remember a personal story in your life based on lyrics to a song, is because of that memorization factor where you have the beat, you have the rhythm, you have the music, and then
Mhm.
just I don't know what to call it, but just the flow of how you speak the words, it's so memorizable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's just so easy, and so that's what makes it. If I sat here and spoke for 2 minutes straight about a story, versus singing a song and telling that story and playing it in your ear over and over and over and over again, where do you got to remember,
Yeah.
more? And so just from
Yeah.
that technicality of it, it's just a great medium for telling stories.
Yeah. The other night, or the other day rather, driving up to my wife's parents' house for Mother's Day,
Mm.
I had just finished a huge meal at Carrabba's, and it was not a keto or carnivore approved meal. And so I was already tired, and this just made matters a lot worse. I needed something to keep me awake. And so I put on some like music that I grew up with, which was kind of closely related to the bluegrass gospel that I played, but it's a genre called Southern gospel. And I promise you, I was hearing songs that I had not heard in 12, 13, 14, maybe
Yeah.
15 years. And I could remember every single word
Mhm.
like nobody's business. And I even commented to my wife. I was like, this is crazy. I haven't heard this
It's
music
insane.
in eons. And yet I remember every single word confidently. It's crazy.
The science behind that goes beyond our knowledge for this podcast, but there's obviously some having to do with the brain that your brain stores that information
Yeah.
in song form. It must store it differently than it does other information, for example, for you
Yeah.
to remember. Like, for instance, let's just say if there was a fun song you learned about chemistry to help you learn a formula in high school. I bet if you ask someone, hey, what was this formula that you learned 15 years ago in high school, they wouldn't be able to tell you. But if they learned a song about it, they would say, "Oh yeah, I remember
Uh-huh.
that song. You do this, this, da, 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 da," and then you would know it.
That's right.
There's something about songs. But anyway,
Yeah, 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 for sure. I mean, they help you remember. I wrote down events, people, places, so it's not even just the lyrics themselves.
mm,
But yes, the lyrics themselves. That's actually it's almost doubly remarkable, right? Because yeah, a lot of times you can remember the lyrics to a song itself. So whatever story the song tells, but also you can you create associations with that song with other things that are happening in your life. So when I think about um, oh, I just had a really good one off the top of my head. When I think about Sum 41. So Sum 41 was one of my favorite bands growing up, but unfortunately, I
mm,
have a little bit of a negative association because one of their albums, great album, I love
mhm,
listening to it, except that my grandfather was really, really sick
mm,
when this album, like right around the time that it came out, and I was listening to it, and like I specifically remember sitting in the hospital room with my, with my portable CD
yeah.
player, holler, my portable CD player, list, or maybe it might have been an MP3 player when those like first came out, one of those really tiny MP3 players. Might have been one of those. Anyway, I just remember listening to this album, there in the hospital, and I'm pretty sure that was the time. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure like he never left. He never came out of the hospital. That was when he passed away, and so this would have been back in 2005. And so yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like as much as like I love the songs, and today I could easily sing them if it was on the radio. I also have sort of this negative association with this, terrible, incident in my life where he passed away. So it's just really something.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that in one of our very earlier episodes. I said something along the lines of, even though a song might not have anything to do with a certain might not have anything to do with the story or time and place that comes to mind. You could be a very happy song, but if you listen to that song constantly when you were in a bad state of like mind during a given time of your life, you're going to remember and go back to that place. So not only does music you know tell a story effectively and help us for memorization and easily remembering, but it's has something to do with not just putting you in that state of emotion that you were in, but also like making taking you right back exactly to where you listened it the most. So the brain associates as well the words and where you were at the time when that was going on, which is just incredible.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Um, how do we want to do this? I have another thought, but did you have a thought? Did you have a thought that you wanted to bring up about music, or are you
No,
just kind of
no
piggybacking
additional.
off what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, well, everything that you said was what I was gonna say, the memorization, and then I guess the only thing I'd
Gotcha.
add, we kinda talked about a little bit, was, just eliciting the emotion. So, even without words, and we all listen to, soundtracks for video games or movies, even if you
Yeah.
had not watched the movie, any type of music, I mean, it's, I guess you can say the science of music. There are certain chords and there are certain melodies to play that, I mean, and Steve knows more about this than I do, but just from what I've studied as well, that if you play these certain chords in a row, these certain melodies, it just elicits a sad feeling or elicits a happy feeling.
Right.
It's just how it works, and that's just, I don't know if there's a special word for it, but that's just the science of music. And so,
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
prepared for, it's just, it's a good way to kind of know whether it's in marketing or a video game, just by playing certain notes in a certain pattern, can really evoke even a specific story or time or place, but a certain emotion in someone. It's
Well,
very
look,
powerful tool.
I mean, if you want to, the thing is, it's like, I'm gonna ruin some things for some people here, but if you want to write a pop rock anthem, you do not have to wonder what to write. I mean, in other
Mhm.
words, like it's almost boring in that sense. It's like,
Yep.
oh, okay, this will almost certainly be a guaranteed hit. Go to YouTube and search for the 4-chord song. Now, I probably just ruined your life, but if you go to YouTube and search for the 4-chord song and listen to that, you will hear pretty much every popular song
Yep.
of at the time it was recorded of the past 4 to 5 decades or whatever, and you're
Yeah.
literally going to be like, oh, and in numbers. So a lot of people don't know, but I mean, everybody knows about musical notes, but what a lot of people don't know is that in music theory, notes can actually be associated with um, numbers, and there's a really technical way of looking at this, and then there's a less technical way of looking at this. And in the studio world, we use what's called the Nashville number system, which is basically just a real quick shorthand way of doing this. And what we call that chord progression that makes up the 4-chord song is just a 1, 5, 6 minor 4. It's those 4 chords in some arrangement of them, but it's usually exactly in that order: 1, 5, 6 minor 4. And there's your pop rock anthem, man. That's
Yeah.
that's that's all you
That's
need. You
it.
need that and a halfway decent story, and
Yeah,
you've
really.
got it. So
Yep.
that's for sure. Now, another thing as a musician specifically that I love about music is that it's kind of like a universal language.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's really it's I mean, again, we don't no need to belabor this point, but it is something that's really interesting and fascinating. If you were to have multiple people in a room together, 2 or more, who didn't speak any of the same language, but yet they all played music,
Mhm.
they would be able to, in that way, communicate and maybe, not to get too woo-woo here, but potentially even share emotions and share, yeah, I mean, share states of mind, states of being, and everything that normally you would actually need physical words to accompany, but you don't really need that in the case of if you can, sort of play music or even listen to music together. I mean, this is in a sense why I've always found it fascinating that, like a lot of times you watch live performances from bands and stuff, and it'll be in countries that like they're not English speaking countries, and
Yeah.
yet they
Yep.
know all the words, and
Yep.
that all those people don't necessarily speak English.
Yep.
It's just,
But it
yeah,
elicits a feeling out of them, and they love it.
yeah,
Yep.
it totally
Absolutely.
does, and it's like it's hard for me to necessarily put myself there because, like, for example, I'm not necessarily gonna go to, like, a Hispanic, like, a Latino, like, band who I don't know any of the words and go, like, sing along with them
Mhm.
personally, but maybe that's just my own personality, but
Yep.
yet in a lot of other countries, you do see this when people come over from the US. So, I don't know, just something that's always fascinated me, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. No, I agree. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any other points if you wanna, unless you have, something else that, you wanna talk about music specifically before we move on to our next topic?
No, well, I mean, we have a couple songs,
Yeah, yeah,
that
yep. So we
yeah,
can move
yeah.
on to that.
Yeah, we can move on to that. Let's move on to some sort of songs that we like. And so I'll go first. I guess I'll go, then I'll let
Yep,
you go, and then whatever.
yep, perfect.
So I always liked Haley's song by Eminem. And again, I'm not going to be able to, like, necessarily repeat all the words to you here now. But one of the reasons I thought about it was it tells a very specific story. It's a true life story. It's very much about Eminem's relationship to his daughter. And one of the reasons I thought about it too, and I think this is a very sort of meta topic for us, is it makes me think of one of my best friends growing up, JV. And this was one of his favorite songs. He really liked Eminem for some reason. I was kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. But I did like the song. It was catchy. And I just remember singing along to it with him growing up all the time. And his birthday was on May 8th. So I guess that was Mother's Day. His birthday was on May 8th, but he's actually passed away. So he passed away probably 3 or 4 years ago now. And I don't know specifically, but I think it was probably drug related. We lost touch whenever I left New Jersey in 2005. We were best friends growing up, and we just didn't really connect much after that. And yet all these years later, I regret not staying in touch with him. I mean, he was by far and away my best friend growing up. And so that song, not only, is it a good, I think, story, it's good storytelling, but it makes me think about him. And it's just one of those stories one of those songs, I will never hear that song again and not think about him, which is
Yeah.
very much what we've been talking about. I'll never be able to do that. So it's really interesting.
No, that is. No, that's good. It's a good song too, and Eminem has put out so many good songs anyway.
I know I had a hard time thinking which one I was going to choose. I knew I was
Yeah.
going to choose one, but I wasn't sure which. So
Yeah. So,
And what's crazy about that is I'm not like some rap fan, right? Like if you look at me, like I am not like rap is not my favorite style of music, and I'm not like some diehard Eminem fan. I mean, a lot of his stuff is really explicit. I don't listen to Eminem, but my point is that's almost my point. Is even though I don't listen to him, some of his songs are still very iconic, and I almost knew picking a song that had to do with storytelling that I was going to have to choose an Eminem song, even though I don't really listen to Eminem. So
right.
I found that fascinating.
Yeah, and it's funny too about, I guess, I'll just touch on it really quickly, but about how genres, how people like their certain genre. And granted,
Yeah.
like I have my own certain genres that I'm very fond of, but when people ask me like what kind of music I listen to, I really just say honestly, like I like artists and I like bands. It doesn't matter if that band is a pop band, if it is an 80s rock band, or if it's one of my metalcore bands. If it's a band that puts out good music, I'm gonna like them. It doesn't matter what kind of music it is.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so my first song, speaking of different genres, that two bands I actually picked for my examples are all Christian bands. It just happened
Hmm.
to be so, and I think it's because they kind of provide, I think, two different examples of what we're talking about. So the first one is a song called "Thief" by Third Day. I think most Christians our age are probably very familiar with this song, but it's
Fantastic.
this one is an example of actually telling a story. Um, so Third Day, I think it was written by Mac Powell. He tells a story of the thief that is on the cross beside Jesus, and but it talks about yeah, I won't go into all the lyrics and all the things. You can look it up for yourself, but it paints a just an awesome picture. And obviously, he has kind of fun with telling the story, and he kind of adds some. It's not like he's quoting scripture about this is exactly
Yeah.
what Jesus said, exactly what the thief said, but just a great picture of the conversation and of Jesus on the cross and the thief and their interaction together and the build up to it as well. And every time I listen to that song, it just, it stirs a lot. It stirs a lot of emotion, just picturing and painting that scene, which I think music does greatly, is helping you visualize something. And yeah, it's a great story, and I think it's just generally speaking too, even aside from the Christian connotations, it's a great example of a song that tells a story well and just effectively.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah. I love it. First time I heard that, it was like chills, man. I mean, of course, because
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah,
a Christian,
absolutely.
but like, yeah, totally, absolutely, um, awe-inducing in my opinion. So very good song.
Absolutely.
Worth a listen, even if you're not a Christian.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
All right, so the next one for me is by they could be my favorite band of all time. They could be. I think they probably are. And that would be the Eagles.
Mm.
The Eagles and their song "Hotel California." This is a fictional song, again, more allegorical. It's less of that real, it's not about any real thing specifically. If you're listening to this podcast, I mean, my goodness, I can't imagine that you haven't heard this song. So surely you know what I'm talking about. The Eagles, "Hotel
If
California."
you haven't, just pause this and just go listen, because
Please, it is far more
you're probably one of
fascinating and
100
better.
people in the world who maybe haven't heard it, so just go listen to
Exactly.
it.
Yes, it is very iconic. I just saw them live a couple months ago in Georgia, and it was just, oh man, just
That's
fantastic.
cool.
It's the second time I got to see them live, and
Cool.
they're almost, they're getting really old now.
Yeah.
So, but it is a very interesting song. It very much is a it does tell a story, okay, from beginning to end, but the story itself is not real. It's allegorical and more, I guess, metaphorical would be the way to put it. I did look up how what the band members said about that, like when they actually
Mm.
wrote the song, what were they thinking or whatever. And there are a lot, different opinions that seem to float around, but apparently, and I'm getting this from americansongwriter.com, apparently they said that the song is basically, well, it says this: the band members themselves have offered a variety of different explanations for the meaning of Hotel California. They've said it's a socio-political statement. They've said it's about darkness and light, and they've said it's about the self-destruction that comes from greed and hedonism. So it is. And you sort of see that in the lyrics, and it does. It tells a story that kind of has, like, it's not a very good ending, and so whatever the story is trying to tell you, whatever the song's trying to tell you, is you probably should avoid it and not
Mhm.
go there. Wherever the Hotel California is, it's probably not somewhere that you should go, because apparently you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. So anywhere that I
Mm.
can never leave, I'm immediately going to be a little bit skeptical of that. So
I forget specifically now, exactly what was said about it, but I've heard a few, uh, um, shall I say, like, messages from preachers about
yep,
how evil
yeah,
this
I know,
song and
I
album
know,
are,
I know.
and it always got me a good laugh. So anyway, I just thought that was funny. But
Yeah, I
no,
think I think I think the general idea from that angle is they're talking about having a good time in hell or something like that. Like, the Hotel
exactly,
California is
yeah,
actually hell, and they're talking about
partying and living
having
it
a
up
good
and
time.
enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
right. And it's like, no, like that's not what it's about. But it's fun to jump on the bandwagon, I suppose. So anyway.
It's well, it gave me something to laugh about. So no,
Well,
that's
these
that's
preachers
a good point.
apparently seem to know more about what the song's about than the people who wrote it themselves. So anyway.
Yeah, let's take their
Yeah.
word for it.
Yep.
So my second song, it's kind of a toss up between my two favorite bands, one being Snow Patrol and the other Jars of Clay. And so the
Uh,
second one, I went back and forth, but I chose Jars of Clay specifically. I actually changed the song. I had one of their songs called "Oh My God," which is a great song. You should really check it
mm,
out. But the one I decided on was "Boys Lesson One." It came off probably
uh-huh.
my favorite album of all time, called "The Long Fall Back to Earth," and that album, it's a worth a listen through. The whole album, each album kind of has a theme, and
Yeah.
this one is all about relationships. So relationships to your spouse, to God, to your kids, to a person you're dating, and they do it wonderfully. But this song, "Boys Lesson One," is about, I forget specifically who wrote it. I imagine it was probably Dan, the lead singer. But it's essentially, it is about what messages they want to convey to their children. It's specifically their sons, but it applies to daughters as well, and lessons that they want to teach them in life. So it's called Boys Lesson One, and the three lessons that are in it. Lesson one is lesson one, do not hide. Lesson two, there are right ways to fight. And then lesson three, the lyrics go in is perfect. They say, lesson three, you're not alone. Not since I saw you start breathing on your own. You can leave, you can run. This will still be your home. And then at the very end of the song, that's I guess you can call it the bridge, is they say, when you need it most, I have I have 100 reasons why I love you. And it's just every time I listen to that song, it reminds me of kind of how I was treated by my parents, and then also what I want to do differently for my kids.
Mm,
And it specifically, it's weird when you have a song like this that kind of teaches you life lessons. And so just
yeah.
the kind of the truth that is in this song, I just think, yeah, like I want to be able to convey that to my kids or children, perfectly. So,
Yeah.
and it's a song that really elicits a big emotional response as well. But yeah, just a great song.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's crazy, man. I'll tell you there is a just to kind of close this out before we go into the stories of the week. I was trying to find a quote and I can't quite find it. But there is there's a quote from a dude a couple centuries ago, Andrew something,
Hmm.
and it's I'm gonna butcher it, but I'll kind of instead of trying to quote it, I'll give you the gist here. But
Yep.
it's something along the lines of, I, don't give me the ability to influence people through philosophy or politics or socio-political action. That's not what I want. Um, allow me to write the songs of a nation, something like that.
Yeah, I remember. I
So
know that quote. Yep.
yeah, and so the idea being that, yeah, I mean, like a generation will be changed more by the arts than typically it will be by the academics, which is kind of sad.
Mhm.
In a way, kind of goes back to the idea of experiential storytelling versus, looking at logic and facts and data and having those things. Yeah, I mean, emotional storytelling, these are important, but I would argue that we want to also be grounded and rooted in fact. And so that's one of the things about music is that it can be wielded dangerously.
Yeah.
It can be used to advance agendas and ideas that are not true and yet get wide appeal because of the actual lyrics. So,
And
um,
a word of caution on that too. And I don't think I've done this for quite a few years now, but especially as a kid and a lot of people throughout their adult years too, because a song hits them home really hard, or they like the music of someone, or even if their music is really spot on, is good, they take that person and elevate them to a very high position of like
yeah.
authority in a way. So just this is a trap to be careful of.
Yeah, and the actual quote, I did find it here. It's real short. Let me make the song. This is Andrew Fletcher.
Hmm.
Dates is 1653 to 1716.
Hmm.
Scottish writer. He said, "Let me make the songs of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws."
Hmm.
And boy, if that was ever true 400 years ago, it is 1,000% true today, and probably even more so because of how quickly things can
Yes,
spread. I mean, look at TikTok. Look
absolutely.
at how a
Oh my
song on
gosh.
TikTok can go viral in a millisecond, man, and it's
Yep.
it's just it's just out there for hundreds of thousands of millions of people to
Yep.
see. So
Yep.
it's something to guard against. So
All right, it is time for a story of the week. I'll
do it.
uh I'll take it this time. So Steve chose an Eminem song, and my story of the week has to do with Eminem. So he
Nice.
was just inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know if he was officially inducted or if he was on the ballot to get voted in, but it's going to happen whether it did or it's going to. And there's some weird controversies about, well, he's a rapper, he shouldn't be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I never really took the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as that, but I guess that's a thing. But anyway, I think especially Steve's and my age and kind of the 10 years, well, not even 10 years, probably 5 years after us and the 5 to 10 years before us. I mean, Eminem was just probably played a huge part in our lives, even at a very surface level, just knowing the music and hearing it and just seeing his name on things. I mean, I looked it up and I think he's sold 220 million albums, which is just insane. But I might be I'm not a huge Eminem fan. I can't name all his songs, but there are, maybe a half a dozen to a dozen songs where if I'm in the mood, I'll listen to them on repeat for like a week straight, and I, get into that funk again like I was in high school. But
Yep.
really talented guy and had a really interesting story, just his life and everything. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I just thought that was pretty interesting and well deserved.
Mom spaghetti, baby. Mom
Mom
spaghetti.
spaghetti. That's that sweater got dirty.
Oh man, so good. Yeah, yeah. Eminem, definitely one of those who was an influencer, and even though I
Mhm.
wasn't like that into his stuff, it's like it was impossible to ignore.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So that's for sure. My story of the week is just I'm pretty sure I've dipped into the Star Trek pool for my story of the week before, but I'm gonna do it again today,
I'll allow it.
because
I'll allow it.
Star Trek: Strange New Worlds
Mhm.
is out. And that reminds me, I think I am probably an episode behind now, because I think last night we didn't watch it, and there I think on Thursday is another episode. So anyway, so
Hmm.
Star Trek Strange New Worlds, it is basically the time period prior to what would be in the original series, and this is where Captain Pike is actually the captain of the Enterprise, and it's really exciting to see some new Star Trek stuff going on, and to see some of the characters that you would be familiar with from the original series, but this is prior to the setting of the original series. And so it's going to be a way to kind of get a new take on some old, old characters in that
Nice.
sense. So it's going to be cool. It's going to be really fun. Called Strange New Worlds. And if you got Paramount Plus, you know, go watch it. I mean, I think it's going to be really. It's really cool so far. The actual, the storytelling looks great. The set design and everything is just, I mean, it's just out of this world. What what
Mm.
what they're what they're doing. Like I said earlier, it's kind of like some of these shows are being produced, movie quality now, and it's just really insane. So it's good. I'm excited about it.
I'll have to maybe watch it so that you and I have something to talk about for Star Trek. That's the
Dude,
gap
I'm
that we
I'm
need to
telling you,
close.
man. We
I'll do
do.
that. I'll
We
do,
have to close this gap.
I'll watch the Star Trek episodes if you go to a concert with me. Does that sound like a fair trade off?
Oh my gosh. People don't get beat up watching Star Trek. I mean, at least not in their living room. So
I
I
guess
don't
you
know.
watch you watching it a different way than I would, Steve. A different way than I would.
Oh man. Nice. All right. All right.
All
Well, I
right,
think that's
Steve.
gonna close this down for this one. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. It was a pleasure talking with
Beautiful.
you as always, and
As
we'll see you
always.
next time.
All right, man. Sounds good. Thanks.